Good morning. Happy Wednesday. I hope everybody's having a wonderful Christmas week, and I hope you got all your Christmas shopping done. So, in a lot of these auditor comment sections, you'll see the phrase and the citation floated around. Castle Rock versus Gonzales, the police have no duty to protect you. You'll see that ad infinitum, without asterisks, without explanations. No duty to protect you. And I've done videos on this before, but I'm still seeing it. So I figure, what the hell, I'll make another video, because I made those other videos probably 2 years ago, and I don't even know where they are in my catalog, and you probably don't either. So anyway, Castle Rock versus Gonzales. Well, let's start one case back. Let's start off with DeShaney. I'm going to say it's versus Winnebago County Social Service, something along those lines. DeShaney versus Winnebago County Social Services. I might have the name wrong after DeShaney. Sue me. Anyway, in DeShaney, it was a terrible set of facts. There was a father who was being accused of physically abusing his son, beating up his son. And the social services had been out multiple times to investigate, and they never took the kid away from the dad. And then the dad went, I guess he had already gone a step too far, but then the dad beat the boy so bad one day that the boy has permanent brain damage. He's going to have to be taken care of for the rest of his life. I mean, just ruin this kid's entire life. And mom, I think it was mom. Mom was upset, and mom wanted to sue. And because this kid's going to be incurring like all sorts of, huge financial costs for proper care. I mean, the states do give you some disability insurance and things like that, but for proper care, it's going to cost a bunch of money. And so mom sued the Winnebago County Social Services Department, whose job was to investigate these things and protect these kids, pull them out of the abusive environments. And the court in that said, no, she sued under the, it's a 42 USC 1983 lawsuit, which of course allows you to sue if your rights are violated. It's a violation of rights under color of law. And the right that she asserted was being violated was her 14th Amendment due process right, which is, if you guys remember from your days in law school, the right, so you can't be deprived of your life, liberty, or property without due process of law. That's almost verbatim what it says, at least close enough that it's accurate. So you can't be deprived of your life, liberty, or property without due process of law. So she said that her son was deprived of his liberty interest in not being made mentally retarded by his father. And that was a 14th Amendment violation of due process. Substantive due process. That's substantive due process as opposed to procedural due process. To give a layman's definition, is you're looking at as substantive can the government do this? Does the government have the right to do this? Does the government have the authority under the Constitution or whatever to do this? Procedural due process is, did they do the right procedure to take it away from you? Like if they're gonna suspend your driver's license, you're entitled to a hearing. That's the procedure. So substantive is, can they take your driver's license away for drunk driving? And then the procedural is, are they going to give you that hearing? So there has to be a hearing. It could be an administrative hearing, like California, they do DMV hearings to take away your driver's license, and then you go to court for the criminal charges. So that's the difference between substantive and procedural. So the court said there's no substantive due process right for a case like this in DeShaney. They said that the 14th Amendment is not a font of tort liability. You can't just sue anybody under the 14th Amendment. They got to be a state actor or somehow connected to the state. They got to be acting for the state, with the state somehow. It can't just be some individual, some dude like the state didn't want dad to beat up the son. They didn't want that. But it happened. And so the dad did it, not the state. So there is no 14th Amendment right for you to sue. And in this case, it was social services, not the police. But it's the same functional thing. The social services department, yeah, it's their job to protect these kids, but you can't sue them if a kid gets hurt despite their efforts. And I'm not saying that they were trying hard. I'm not saying they were good people. I don't like social services department. I don't like the way the state takes over those functions. I think they do a really piss poor job. So there you go. So that was DeShaney. And then we go to Castle Rock, because Castle Rock was actually dealing with the police. Castle Rock, it was a Colorado case, and mom and dad were getting a divorce. And mom got a restraining order against dad. And this was a very specific restraining order. It had authorizations in the Colorado statutes that said the police shall enforce this, and they'll do reasonable steps to investigate, and they'll make an arrest on probable cause. They must make an arrest on probable cause, and all this great language, right? So she had this restraining order against him, and then he got some visitation. The court changed the restraining order, gave him some visitation, and then on one day that he didn't have visitation with the kids, he shows up while the kids are outside playing, grabs the kids, takes off. Naturally, she calls the police, and the police are like, call us back later if call us back in a couple hours if he doesn't return the kids. A couple hours pass, she calls them back, and they're like, call us back later if he doesn't return the kids. So a couple hours later, she calls back, and they're like, if he hasn't returned them by midnight, give us a call. So a little after midnight, she goes down to the police station because she's a mom and her kids have been abducted. She goes down to the police station and she's like, "Look, I've got this temporary restraining order against him, and it says you're gonna enforce it." And the cop was like, "Yeah, we'll get on that." And then the cop went to lunch or dinner or whatever. So the next day, in a very unfortunate series of events, dad shows up at a police station and just starts shooting, and his intent is apparently to commit suicide by cop. So dad dies, and they go out to the car and they find the bodies of the 3 kids. So the cops effed up badly. The cops were terrible people who did terrible things, and I hope to God they were all fired and never work as cops again, because they should not be cops. And mom was naturally very upset, and she knew, or probably her attorney knew, that you can't sue under the 14th Amendment for deprivation of life, liberty, or property. You can't sue the government for that. You can't sue the police. You can't sue the social services just because they failed to do their job. You can't sue them on that. But she had this restraining order. And the restraining order said that the cops had to take action. They had to make an arrest if there's probable cause. And there's probable cause. Well, dude wasn't around, but there's probable cause. They had to do a reasonable investigation. They didn't do a reasonable investigation. They had to take action, and they didn't take action. So this piece of paper, she has this piece of paper. She has a restraining order. She wants them to, she had a property interest in that. That's her restraining orders. That's what her argument was. And so she sued, again, 42 U.S.C. 1983 lawsuit, deprivation of rights under color of law, for a property interest in this restraining order. And the court was like, okay, look, you don't have a substantive right. We've already dealt with that in DeShaney. So let's see if there's a procedural right, because maybe the court mused if the state had actually made it mandatory, not fake mandatory, but really mandatory, then maybe there could be a procedural due process violation. But the court said no. This is not really mandatory, because they have to make an arrest on probable cause, but that's if he's there. That's just if he's there. He's not there. He wasn't there when she showed up, when she called. And, they have to investigate. But I mean, there's no time limit on that. And if there's no time limit on that, if there's no enforcement mechanism, there's no enforcement mechanism in the state statutes. The state statutes don't say you can sue the cops if they fail to enforce this, or if they fail to investigate in a timely fashion, or if they fail to make an arrest if there's probable cause. There's no enforcement mechanism, so it's not really mandatory. And think of it like this: for those of you who think that, who just want to be partisan about this and say, well, if it's bad for the cops, then I want it to be actually mandatory. Think of it like this: in a lot of states, there is statutory language authorizing police on reasonable suspicion to demand your ID. But there's no penalty if you refuse to provide your ID. So they can demand it and you can refuse to give it. It's the lack of penalty that is the big deal. It's the lack of an enforcement mechanism that's the big deal. So the court said, for a variety of reasons, also, you can't sell this restraining order. It doesn't have any monetary value. You can't trade it for anything. So it's not really, you don't have a property interest in it. And the state doesn't actually require the police to do these things. I mean, it looks good on paper, but it doesn't actually require the police to do these things. So there is no procedural due process right that can be enforced against the police for failing to protect you. Okay? So does that mean that a state cannot pass a particular statute? Wait, let's take one step back. Does that holding that is specific to a 14th Amendment due process violation apply to anything else? No, it doesn't. The court was looking at a 14th Amendment due process violation in both DeShaney and Castle Rock. So if you're suing under a different theory, who knows? So that's issue number one. Issue number two is that the court said in Castle Rock that just because they aren't allowing you to sue doesn't mean that the states aren't free to give you a cause of action to sue the police. The states can, if they want, make a legal duty on the police that gives you the right to sue. That'd be your right to sue. But number three, there is still the job description duty that the police have, which is not a legal duty, but it is still a duty that they have. It's a job duty, not a legal duty, where they could get fired if they don't protect you, if they don't take reasonable steps to do their job. And their job is to protect you and to catch criminals and to deter criminality and things like that. So if they aren't doing their job, they can get fired, they can get reprimanded, they can get, I don't know, maybe fined or put on desk duty or demoted or whatever. They can be penalized if they're not doing their job. So when someone says that based on Castle Rock versus Gonzales, the police have no duty to protect you, what they mean is the police have no duty, asterisk, to protect you. And then the asterisk is legal duty under the 14th Amendment due process clause to protect you. That's what they mean. And you might say, well, that's a pretty fine distinction to make, and it's really not. It's really not. Now, most states that I'm aware of don't allow you to sue the police for failing to protect you outside of police custody. And let's be very clear, that's outside, because inside police custody, if you're in police custody and they let someone beat you up, then you can definitely sue them, because once they take custody of you, then they have an obligation to protect your life, liberty, and property. That a legally enforceable obligation to protect you. But back to the back to the states don't obligate this stuff because, for example, if you've got, let's just use small numbers just for easy math. Let's say you've got 5 officers and you've got 10 crimes going on, then obviously you're not going to be able to respond to all 10 crimes. You can't have an officer everywhere all the time. You know, if you make the decision to have you got 5 officers, you design 5 routes for each, 1 route for each officer to take through portions of the city that you think are the high crime areas, and a crime happens in a different section of the city or in a section of the city that may even be part of one of these routes, but the cop is just at the wrong place on his route to be able to respond to it in time. What can the state do? All the state would be doing would be, either they would have to cover the lawsuits for these cops, or they would have to not have cops anymore. Because, just imagine, of those 5 cops, if you get mugged in, downtown, and there's 5 cops that theoretically could have been the cops sent to assist you, then I'm assuming you'd be able to sue all 5 of them, right? Just think about the liability that would fold out. And these cops aren't they don't control. Because they're employees, they don't control where they are when they're there. They get dispatched places. So then that means that you could probably sue the police themselves, which would be the city, which means that cities would be going bankrupt. Think about Chicago's liability; it would be just massive, just instant bankruptcy of the city. They wouldn't be able to clean their streets or have parks or offer any sort of public services. They wouldn't be able to pave their streets, keep their sidewalks in order. It'd be insane. So anyway, whenever someone says that the police have no duty to protect you because of Castle Rock versus Gonzales, now, hopefully, that they're partisan, that they're propagandists, and or they're just repeating things that they don't understand. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.